Hi everyone, my name is Lena and welcome to my channel. So today I wanted to come here and share with you guys all the books that I read in the summer of 2024. I don't read like a crazy amount of books every month. I read around like 4 to 5, so it didn't really make sense for me to do like wrap-ups every single month because then I would only be coming here to talk about 4 to 5 books. So I thought it would be a good idea to just do a seasonal wrap-up every time. So my summer wrap-up is going to include all the books that I finished from June to August. And in total, I gotta count actually. I didn't prepare for this at all. Haven't pulled any books, haven't looked at anything. The only thing I did do is that I have my Goodreads open, and then we're just gonna move with the flow. Okay, shall we? If my counting was correct, I read 12 books in the summer. So over 3 months, I read 4 books in each month, which it's average for me, 1 book a week more or less. August was a little bit slower for me because it was back to school. I was getting back to the grind, getting used to the very fast and intense pacing all over again. So I did read less. But we're gonna talk about it. Okay, let's not skip steps. So starting with the month of June, I started very strong with reading Funny Story by Emily Henry. So Funny Story is a romance book slash literary fiction. It's kind of a mix between the two of them, following our two characters, Daphne and Miles, after their respective exes broke up to get together. So basically, Daphne's fiance broke up with her. Miles's girlfriend broke up with him, and the two exes are now a couple. So it's kind of like a interesting way that they get to meet each other because then Daphne needs a new home and Miles happens to have a new room available since his ex moved out, I guess. So now they're roommates and that's how their friendship develops, and they're obviously in the beginning nobody's looking into a new relationship because trauma. Okay, they're both going through trauma. And I thought the book was very enduring. I really like Emily Henry's writing and how she's able to focus on characters individually and not just their relationship. So there's more to each of the characters. They feel more complex, they feel more developed. The one thing I didn't really enjoy was that I thought that, not to say that your trauma is invalid, blah, 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 but I felt like we weren't exposed to Miles's trauma to really care for it. Like, we didn't get to see it a whole lot. So when it got involved in the third act breakup that every book has, or third act conflict, I don't remember which one of the two. The conflict that happens in the third act, it was in relationship to his issues, like his personal issues too. And I just thought that that was like, oh, like you're just trying to make an explanation, like a make up reason in order for them to break up or to have a conflict. It kind of just seems like a filler, like to fulfill the recipe of a typical romance book, which I didn't really enjoy. I didn't really think the book needed that a whole lot. But other than that, I did enjoy our characters. I enjoyed their relationship a lot. Yeah, I would strongly recommend. I give this book 4 stars. Then moving on, I read book 3 to my favorite series of all time, which is Throne of Glass. I read Assassin's Blade, and that comprises of 5 short stories. It's actually a prequel to the series where we're following Selene Sardathian and how she became the world's most famous assassin. And it is a prequel. It was kind of frustrating that I had to stop the present tense and go back in the past, because I was very already invested in the present like situation that was going on. So what I did is that I split up reading this book into 2 parts. I actually read, because it's like 5 short stories, I read like 2 to 3 of the short stories, paused, and then I read the next book, and then I finished. And I thought that was a very, very enjoyable way to kind of like split it up into like biteable chunks and like finish it. And the ending was just exactly what I needed to do. I cried, I sobbed, I was so sad and heartbroken, and I gave this book 3 stars just because, as a prequel, it's just generally a little slower. And again, I was a little frustrated to have to go back to past tense rather than focus on what was already going on in the plot. But then, like I said, I read the next book in the series in between the short stories, which is Air Fire. That's book 4. And oh my God, This book was so good. 5 stars. One of the best books I read this year. I am so invested. That is when the world literally like exploded. Sarah J. Maas took whatever she wrote in books 1 and 2 and she multiplied it by like 10. There's so many more characters. The world is so much more vast. The magic system has been expanded and the stakes are so much, 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 much more higher. You can see like how she really like delve deep into the fantasy genre with that book. And basically, what this series follows. So, if we go back to book 1, we're following Selena Sardathian, who is the world's most renowned, most famous assassin. And at the beginning of the book 1, she is enslaved. She was caught and she's enslaved until the crown prince goes into her slave camp to save her and recruit her for this assassin's competition. And whoever wins this competition is going to become the king's assassin, where Selena would have to do the king's dirty work for a few years and then she would be granted her freedom. And she wants nothing more than to be granted her freedom and finally do whatever she wants and not be a slave anymore. So she agrees and off they go. But then it just becomes something so much bigger than this tiny little competition. This competition is already in the back of my mind. It's gone. It's already, we already expanded. Like it's so much more than this competition and it's so enjoyable. Selena is probably my favorite female main character ever written. She's so she like her complexity is like kind of beautiful to read about because she's such an uplifting person. Like she's funny, she's witty, but she has grit and she's a badass assassin that will not take shit from anybody else. And at the same time, she's kind. Like she's a good person, even though she has gone basically through trauma after trauma after trauma and difficulty after difficulty her entire life, she's still a very uplifting and positive person. And it's just a joy to be in her POV. I love her. So I am so excited to keep on reading the series. I still have some books left. So I'm kind of taking a little break because what I have next is a tandem read, and that's scary. Moving on. Actually, to correct myself, I read Air Fire in May. So I finished. Oh, how did that happen? So I finished Air Fire in May, and then I finished Assassin's Blade since I split it up. I finished Assassin's Blade already in June, and then I went straight into Queen of Shadows, and that is so far the best book I read this year. Wow. Fantastic. I am so invested. I love this world so much. I love the characters so much. I love the romance that we have so much, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. If you want to get into any kind of fantasy romance, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend probably starting Akatar first, just because it's not as complex. So just like dip your put the dip your toes. Is that the expression? Dip your toes in the water of romantasy, see if you like it, and then get invested into an 8 book series that is just gonna rock your world. I think about these characters every single day. There's not a day that passes that I don't think, oh my gosh, I got to read this series. How blessed I am. Okay, moving on. Then, also in June, I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, and this is one of the very first thrillers that I read, and I enjoyed it. I kind of was expecting that I was gonna love it so much because it just has so many glowing reviews for a thriller. And I thought it was okay. It's kind of slow paced, and but I guess that's how thrillers go. Like I was on the edge of my seat a little bit. I wanted to know what was gonna happen. The plot twist twisted. Okay, let me say I did not see it coming. That was really cool. And basically, what we follow in this book is a couple that is going through some hardships in their relationship, and to kind of like save the marriage, they go into like this retrieve in the middle of nowhere in Scotland, in the middle of a blizzard. And then things start unraveling from there, and you don't really know anymore who has good intentions and who is saying the whole truth. And I'm going to leave it at that. I thought it was enjoyable for my first thriller. I'm actually excited to keep on reading more thrillers from now on, and I gave this book 4 stars. So that concludes all the books that I read in June. Books in June. Moving on to July books. I started with Wild Love by Elsie Silver, where we follow Forgran, who, if you've read the Chestnut Spring series, he is Willa's brother, Willa from Heartless, book 2. So he's her brother, and he is a billionaire. He kind of created the Spotify of this world. That's what I figured, and then made a lot of money. And now he is into the music business, and he's a producer. He's starting his own company. I forgot what that's called. He produces music, right? So he goes into like Rose Hill. Rose Hill, that's very small town in Canada because he wants his peace. He wants to be away from the spotlight. And that's where he and Willa used to spend his summers growing up. And we also follow our female main character, who is Rosie, who I thought was kind of weird how the town was Rose Hill in our first female main character of the series is Rosie, but whatever. And she and Ford, they knew each other from childhood. She is Ford's best friend's sister. And they kind of have this little of animosity going on. It's not enemies to lovers. They have a little bit of animosity, little bit of flirtation at the same time going on. And she is going through a tough time in her life. She just lost her job in the big town. She doesn't really know what else she wants to do with her life, and she just goes back to her hometown to live with her brother for a little bit so she can figure out exactly what she wants to do. And I don't really have like a very specific reason why this book wasn't didn't hit for me completely. Like I can't really pinpoint a reason why. It just didn't. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't the best book by Elsie Silver that I've read. It also wasn't like a spectacular romance book, in my opinion. So I give this book 4 stars. I will probably be continuing the series. I know Wild Eyes just came out, so it will probably be on my TBR sometime soon. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Next, also in July, I read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. And I read The 7 Year Slip earlier this year, and I absolutely love it. 5 stars. This book is like so magical and whimsical, and the romance is like I don't know. I love that book. And then I wanted to read more of her books, so I read The Dead Romantics, and there you follow. I wish I remember her name. Phoebe? No. We follow Florence, who is a ghostwriter for a very famous romance author, and she is in a writing slump. She can't seem to be able to write a happy ending for the couple that she is writing about, and that's because she went through a very tough breakup and she doesn't really believe in love anymore. So she can't just like make up this happy ending. She thinks that no couples have happy endings like that men are trash and whatever. And then she meets her new editor, who wants her to deliver the book because they're on a deadline. So they have a very bad meeting because she obviously does not have a book to give to him. So it's not a so meet cute. It's actually like a, you know, do your job. I'm your boss. Like you're breaching the contract. Like you're gonna be fired. And she's like, oh shit, I still have pages and pages and pages to write because I have no idea what I'm gonna do for this book. So until unfortunately somebody close to Florence passes away and she's forced to go back to her hometown where she has not been in many, many years for this funeral. And she happens to see ghosts all of her life. And it's like a family gift, I guess. Like her dad is able to see ghosts as well. And I thought it was done really well. It's not like the Sixth Sense that you're like, oh, I see ghosts, I see dead people. It's like she's able to write it in a very beautiful prose. Like they see death as this beautiful experience of like passing on. And her family, with this gift, they have a funeral home. And that's what they want to be able to like accomplish for the dead. They just want to honor them and they want them to like pass away happily and in peace and just help them move on to the afterlife. And I thought that was done really beautifully. Perfect for this time of the year in Halloween. It's not eerie, it's not scary, and I didn't think she was going to be able to, but Ashley Poston definitely portrayed this like I see dead people well. Like I thought I was going to be like this is weird. I don't buy it. Because then Florence is in her funeral home or in her family's funeral home back in her hometown when there is a knock 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 and she sees the ghost of her editor. And it goes from there. I really enjoyed it. and I gave this book 4 stars. Okay, so next I actually read a full duology. I read the Letters of Enchantment series. So that is Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. And I thought this book was so sweet. Like their love is just so pure and deep. And this man goes to the end of the world for his love. And it's just beautiful. So what we have is it's like this world where the gods are at war, and you have Iris, who is also going through a rough patch in her life because her brother went to the front lines. Her mother's dealing with addiction, and she's forced to work to in order to try to make ends meet for her family. And she's working as an intern into for this journal, and she is Roman's direct like professional rival. They're competing for the same spot as columnist of this journal. But then so they she doesn't like him. They don't like each other because they're competing for the same spot. But then what we have is Roman actually receives letters from Iris that she thinks she's sending to her brother. So they start communicating to each other via these magical typewriters that are somehow connected to each other. And he writes her back, and for a little bit she doesn't know that it's him. So they get to know each other without knowing who exactly they are, and it's just really lovely. The romance is so pure, it's so true, and like I said, he goes to the end of the world for her, and I loved it. I give the first book 5 stars, I think. Did I? No, I get the first book 4 stars and the second book 4 stars too. But I think it's more like they're both 4.5 stars for me. I really enjoy them. I think about them often. And a lot of people criticize the second book. I just think that the second book has less romance. But I think it was a good move. Like you have a lot of romance, a little plot on the first book, and then the second book you have a lot of plot and not as much romance, but there's still like love and kind of like tension. So I thought it was well done. I think the second book answered a lot of questions and holes and gaps that the first book left. So if we just focus on the romance on the second book, like a lot of people wanted, I feel like the plot would have lacked a lot because we did need a lot of explanations on like what was actually going on in this war from book one, and I felt like book two did a solid job at answering those, and I felt like the conclusion was very satisfying for this book. The second book did make me cry a little bit, a little bit. There was a little bit of teary eyes. So really enjoyed it. 4.5 stars each. Strongly recommend if you're looking for a YA romance, like historical fantasy romance. Kind of, yeah. That's the genre I'm gonna I'm gonna box it in. The next book that I read in July was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I've been trying this whole year to like expand my comfort zone and just read more books that I don't typically read. So I feel like I'm in this box of romance and romantasy, and I want to expand, especially into the fantasy, like adult fantasy genre. So I started with The Hobbit because I heard that it's more readable, like easily readable than The Fellowship of the Ring, and it's kind of like it's almost like middle grade level. It's a little boring. I don't want to say the word boring, but it kind of is because it's really old, right? Like this was written like decades ago, and it's kind of just it's very slow paced. So you gotta go into it knowing you're getting a very slow paced story, and you gotta be okay with it from the beginning. Like you're not getting anything else. But other than that, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I like the world. Hopefully, The Lord of the Rings is better than The Hobbit. Like from everything that you hear about, like how great Lord of the Rings is. Like I think it gets better. I think Hobbit is like a prequel. It's a little more middle grade. Um, so yeah, I do look forward into reading Lord of the Rings someday. Not super soon though. 3 stars or 3.5 stars. Not sure. Let me make my mind now. I don't like being unsure. 3 stars. And then the last book that I read in July was Play Along by Listum 40. And this is the fourth book in the Windy City series. I did not read book one, which is Mile High, but I read The Right Move, Caught Up, and now Play Along. And oh my God, all those 3 books that I read, I gave 5 stars. I think they're beautiful romances. The male main characters are all perfect in their own way. Their relationship is beautiful. And I strongly recommend, if you just want like top tier book boyfriends, go to this book series. Just go to this book series. It's sports romance, but it's a sports romance done tastefully. Like you're not just getting like a whole lot of sports, because realistically, girlies, like we all know, like we're not reading these books for the romance. What? We're not reading these books for the sports. Like nobody cares. Like we want romance. So Enlist 140 knows that. So the little bit of sports that's there is done well. It adds to the book. Love it. The fourth book, we're following Isaiah. Isaiah, who is um Kai's brother. So Kai is the MMC that we follow in book three, and they both are in the MLB. We follow Kennedy, and she is the um, assistant medic, I think, assistant doctor to the team. And so, like, there's basically like, oh, like prohibited love, like they can't really be together because she works for the team until they end up eloping, getting married in Vegas one night, and they have to go from there. He's so sweet to her. Like all of these books is about men that just listen to what the women wants and what they're saying, and about the small little things that are done every single day that just show so much love and care. And it's just beautiful. Love it. 5 motherfucking stars. And I read 6 books in July, which more than my average, so pretty good there. But I was again summer break. Okay, this is not gonna happen again in August. Okay, let me tell. August gonna be real short. So then moving on to August, I read Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli, and that book wasn't really for me. I think, and I don't think it's the book's fault. I just think sometimes YA fantasy just doesn't do it for me anymore. Some do, some do. So I'd say it's like half and half. So half YA fantasy works, half of YA fantasy or YA romance doesn't work for me. And this was one of the ones that unfortunately didn't. Just was a little bit too childish. And it had to me so much promise because I love some witchy books. Okay, love them. We're following a witch and a witch hunter. So in this world, witches are banned. They're all, if they're found, they can't exist. They have to run away or they literally die in a very grotesque way. So our main character, she's been in hiding, kind of like in the face of society. So she's a big like aristocrat that goes to balls. So she's kind of like hiding in the face of the enemy. That's how she tackles it. But then she does run an operation that she tries to rescue and save as many underground witches as possible, because what's going on to them is absolutely cruel and unfair, and she wants to save lives, right? So that's what she does. She's known as the Crimson Moth at night. And then we follow our male main character, who is the leader of the guard, who is a freaking witch hunter. And he has the impression that whoever is the Crimson Moth, he kind of has this lead that they are in, society. They are like an elite aristocrat, because at first everybody was like, no, like an elite person, like an aristocrat, would never be a witch. They would never handle or deal with associate themselves with witches. But he's like, no, I think this Crimson Moth is smarter than we give her credit, and I think she's in society. So he ends up courting Rune, who is our female main character, our witch, the actual Crimson Moth, because he thinks either she is the Crimson Moth or she's in league with the Crimson Moth, like within the same social circle. So, and she starts dating him, or she starts courting him because she wants more information that the leader of the guard would be able to offer her, so that it's easier for her to save more witches. So begins this like cat and mouse relationship. It just had so much promise that I think if this book was adult, and what I mean by adult, like I don't mean like spice. It feels different, like the stakes levels and like all the other things. So like the atmosphere and the mood from like YA to adults just feels very different. So I think if this book was adult, it would have completely hit it for me. It could have been like a 5 star for sure because this premise sounds so good. But unfortunately, it didn't do it for me. I think I DNF'd it around like 80% ish. And then I kind of, when I DNF a book, I kind of just scammed the rest. And I'm like, okay, I know how it ends. I don't really want to continue. Let me move on because there's so many other books in the world that I'm sure are going to be the best books I ever read. Like they're going to be 5 stars. So I don't want to waste a lot of my time reading books that I'm not enjoying. I read for enjoyment, not for completion. So we didn't have books real quick. So I did that. I still counted it towards my days or my books read in August because I read like 80% of it. So and then the last and final book, I only read 2 books in August. So the final book that I read in August was Circe by Madeline Miller. And I liked this book a lot. I thought that it had more promise than it gave. Like I was slightly disappointed because we follow a goddess, Circe, and it's just following her life from being like kind of an outcast in the realm of gods into finding her power. And that just sounds like such like women empowerment. She's a witch. She's also a witch. So I also thought it was gonna be like it's just very slow because she's a goddess. She lives thousands of years. So this book feels long because our character has lived for very long. And sometimes because she's an outcast, her life is very boring because she's not able to do anything. Therefore, the books feels very slow sometimes. So in the beginning, like there is this one point that she really finds herself and she finds her power. And there's this beautiful quote that she's like, I stepped into the forest and my life began. And I was like, in the context of the book, that was so powerful. That was beautiful. And if that feeling that that quote gave me was the majority of the book, this would have been 5 stars. I love that little section of the book was so good, but then it kind of fell flat after that. Just missed opportunity a little bit, but I still really enjoyed it. I think I give it 4 stars. Does that seem right though? I think it's more like a 3.5 stars. I give this 3.5 stars. Enjoyed it. We recommend. It's a little bit again more on the slower pace side. This list, like going over this, just really shows me that I need to invest in more fast-paced books because I don't like slow-paced books. Like all the criticism that I've been giving all these books is that it's kind of a little bit slow, a little bit too slow paced. Things could have been quicker and not as dragged out. So I just need to look to books that are not slow. You learn something new every day about yourself, don't we? So that concludes all the books that I read in the summer. If you want to see more videos from me, make sure to follow my channel and give this video a like. And I'm going to see you guys very soon with more videos and possibly the next wrap up, depending how many books I read. You know, like if I keep on reading like 4 or 5 books a month, no point to make a monthly wrap up. But I will come back here back in December to make a fall wrap up. Sounds fun, right? Okay. I will see you guys very soon. Have a lovely rest of your days. Bye.